I wanted to talk about the Tarot of Marseille deck and the advantages I think there are to having that deck and knowing how it works. I think it really help you. I know a lot of pro readers that I work with and I have worked with, and they just look at that deck and they don't use it. They just say, I don't know how you read with that thing. So most people don't use it, at least in my area, they don't. I know it's a very popular deck, but in my area, a lot of people don't use it. And the newer decks out there are wonderful. But I think if you look at the Marseille as the basic foundation of tarot cards, and then you say, okay, from there everything else sort of went from there. And the big one is the Rider deck. 1910, Arthur Waite made that deck. Pictures on all the cards. And that's fine, because most artists today will use that deck as a guide on what their cards are going to look like too. He called it a rectified tarot deck. I don't know what he meant by that, but the thing is, and the major arcana is not really the issue here, because the major arcana represents metaphysical concepts and universal principles and very deep things, and we've got to tone those cards down anyway to our real world to find answers to things. And but the minor arcana has these snapshot pictures with the newer decks today and the Rider deck, and that sort of locks you into a way of seeing that card in a specific way and only that way, and it really hurts the range of what the card can mean, unless you want to believe that the cards have some intelligence and they're laying out specifically in some way to show you something. I don't believe that. I think I think what we do with tarot cards is we find ideas, we find answers, and we find solutions. We see things in these cards that we didn't see before we sat down to look at a question. And they're very, very useful to do that. And so that's the way I look at it. Now, the way I read and the way I teach, the minor arcana, each rank, the four suits are common to it doesn't make any difference. The suit doesn't make any difference. So all the aces mean the same thing. All the twos mean the same thing. Whether it's a two of cups, two of wands, it doesn't make any difference. It's a two. Twos stand for choice. And threes stand for creativity. Whether it's a three of cups, three of swords, it's still creativity. So really there's only 14 meanings you need to know with the minor arcana, the way I teach. Ace through 10 and the 4 court cards. And it works out real well. And that's the way I read. I've been reading professionally that way for 25 years. So it works. I know it works. And a lot of the students I have, they might go on from there and they might put more specific meaning in a suit. They might start to use the suits. It's up to them. I don't use reverse meanings either. They might use reverse meanings later on. It doesn't make any difference. But it's a good starting point. And I think the Tarot of Marseille is also a good starting point to learning the cards, because it's really the bare bones tarot. It's what they started reading with in the 1700s is probably when they started reading professionally. That's what it looks like anyway. Documented records seems to be saying that's late 1700s is when Jebelin and Eliot started reading the tarot cards to see the future, make predictions. So, and what we're looking for is we're looking for answers. We're looking for solutions to things. So, when a card comes up, if it's a negative looking card, that doesn't really help me as much as I'm looking for ideas on how to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So if you take it, for example, let's take the if you take the fours, and we take the fours and we look at those on the Tarot of Marseille, you have just four of the suit, just pip cards. And fours stand for stability. And if you take the Rider deck, and a lot of decks that came out after that, fours are shown here as very stable looking cards. They're the pictures are very stable. But they're snapshots of a type of stability. They're an actual direct image showing a specific type of stability, where this doesn't. It just shows stability, if you know the numerical meaning of the card. And stability can be seen as a very good thing, but it could also be seen as stagnant. It could be seen as boring. It could be seen as peace of mind. It could be seen as serenity, predictable, dependable, wonderful things, but it could also be seen as something that's, things got to be moved. They're stagnant, they're not moving. These don't show that range as much as this does, because all we have here is we know a meaning. Fours are stability. You do the same thing with another example. Any of the other ones you could look at and say the same thing. You could say, okay, fives are change. So here we have change in the Rider deck. And the Rider deck shows disturbing looking pictures for change. Change is disruption. And lots of times changes are. We don't want those. We don't want to change. But if we want to change, then we have, that's what we're looking to do, is change something. And here we just have 5 of the suit. So changes are not seen as something specific. Change is just change. Sometimes change is what we're looking for. Lots of times in a reading, that's what's being we're looking to make changes. And sometimes their changes are very disruptive. So, but as the reader, we would know if this is going to be a good change or a bad one, depending on the rest of the reading. If somebody's striving to make change, then obviously this is not what they're striving for. They're looking to make a change. And that's what they want. This shows that more than this. So this is specific. And the more meaning, the more definition you give a card, the more limited it becomes as far as the meaning it could have. This is wide open. So just learning the meanings, especially keyword meanings like change here with the 5s, helps you, I think, a lot to, if you learn with the Rider, with the Marseille deck, a very traditional, most traditional tarot deck out there, really, authentic tarot deck of cards. If you learn with those cards, and you know that this is change, then when you see this, if you go to another deck later on and you see this, you know, well, okay, this picture is showing a negative change, But it's just change. I know what it is because I know what the Five of Pentacles looks like from the original tarot. So I'm not going to take the picture literally. I'm just taking the meaning of what they're showing, a snapshot of a change here. But there's all sorts of changes that could be happening here. Maybe I want to have change. Maybe I want to stir things up, if that helps the quality of my life. And so when you have negative pictures on a card, I don't try to find negative other than warnings. You know, look out for this. You might have lots of times when we have a challenge, we're looking at trying to accomplish something in a reading. So there's going to be resistance. It's not an easy thing to do. There's going to be blocks. And define those in the reading to say, prepare for this here. It might be an event, it might be a person, it might be something else. But prepare for it. It might be a temptation. The more we prepare for things, the more chances of being successful. But I always look at it as a way out. There's a way out of this situation, or let's try to find the best chance you have to achieve success. Now looking at it, say, well, this doesn't look good because it's a negative looking card. So looking at opportunities are looking at the cards, even if they are challenging in some way, looking at that as a warning or something to prepare for. This is what you're going to be in for, or you could be in for. Prepare for this because the cards suggest ideas. They're not telling you what's going to happen. They're suggesting ideas to you as possible things to prepare for, or things that you have to overcome to be successful in what you're trying to accomplish. They're showing us a way of planning a strategy. And so I really think it would be great if you, I think it's a good idea to learn the basic tarot first. And you can stay with it the rest of your life if you want. I read, most of my readings I read with the Tarot of Marseille. As far as the majors go, they're universal principles, the majors. They're deeper cards. So if they have an image on there, it's not something you could relate to as an everyday occurrence type of thing like you can with this, somebody out in the cold. The majors have a more deeper sense to them. So images on the majors is okay. Because you're going to tone the majors down to your everyday world anyway. Readings are not looking for some universal, some metaphysical concept to help me out here. I want to find answers in my everyday life. And I know pro readers that don't even use the majors. And it's funny because originally, when I first started, I'd say half the readers out there, that's all they used was the majors. But they toned it down, those 22 cards, to everyday life type of things. So I think it's a good idea to learn the Tarot of Marseille. You can't go wrong, because when you see the Six of Wands in this deck, you know what this means. It's overcoming obstacles, perseverance. And if I see a 6 in another deck later on, Six of Wands, this is a victory of some type. But if I see another 6, Six of Swords, these are specific snapshots of some type of aspect of overcoming an obstacle. They're a specific aspect, a specific perception of how we're overcoming this obstacle. Where with the Six of Swords, the Six of Pentacles, or a six, any six, it's just a basic understanding of taking on a challenge and overcoming it. Persevering, not giving up. So I think there's a real advantage to knowing the Tarot of Marseille. Even if you don't use it as a professional reader, maybe you use some other deck. But at least you're now looking at those snapshots on that other deck as literal, and you're looking at them as that's a perception of that energy. That's all. So, Tarot of Marseille, you can't go wrong. My books, I do not use the Tarot of Marseille in my books. I teach with the Rider deck, because that's what everybody uses. And that's what you're probably going to end up going with, a picture deck anyway. But to know this deck really helps you increase the range of your meanings in ways that maybe you haven't thought of. At least that's my feelings. So get yourself a deck of Tarot of Marseille and take a look at them, see what you think of them. Just get the basic meanings down of the cards, and I think it'll help you a lot with this stuff. Again, in my book, Essential Tarot, Unlocking the Mystery, I have a traditional deck in there that I teach with in this book, along with the Rider deck. It's the one JJ Swiss, and it shows the pip cards in the bottom. Of each card. So you get an idea of how it compares with a picture card as well. I use the Rider deck and I use the one JJ Swiss. The one JJ Swiss just got neater looking artwork, and it's kind of a neat deck. But it's very traditional, it's 1800s, and it'll show you a lot. So, Essential Tarot, Unlocking the Mystery. I hope you like this. Keep throwing cards, and we'll talk soon. Bye.